joining me. Welcome back to my tiny shop. Today I've got a project that I want to take care of. It's been on my mind for a while. I have this old cutting board. Now I stopped using this, I don't know how many years ago because the finish is gone and I got another board, right? But I have a need. I want to include this into my camping kitchen gear. And so I'm going to sand it and put a fresh finish on it. So stick around. We'll see what this looks like beginning and after. So having one of these old wooden cutting boards around in your cupboard isn't an unusual thing, I don't think. And you could probably find this like at a yard sale or a thrift shop for $1 or something along those lines. The only thing that's wrong with it is the finish needs to be redone. There are some knife marks, and I'm not going to worry about getting every single knife mark out because it's just going to get more knife marks in it. So basically what I'm going to do is take off all that's left of the old finish and put on a new finish. All right, stick around. So I'll be using a random orbit sander to do this work, starting with an 80 grit. Start with these, the lightest grit you can get away with. If you put like 60 grit or anything coarser, it's likely to leave swirl marks that you're going to have a hard time getting rid of. So 80 grit or 100 grit, the highest you can get away with is the best. Of course, the higher the grit, the finer the grit. So this 80 grit is going to work down there and take care of a lot of those surface scratches and just prepare the surface for me to move up to the 120 grit. And that's probably all I need to do. Right? It's just a cutting board. It's not fine woodworking, right? So let's get started with this. All right, so at this point, the board has a nice rough feel to it. There's still knife marks, like I said. I'm not going to worry about getting them all out. So I'm ready to go over this with some 120. So I use the 80 grit only on the flat surfaces. These edges you can see are rounded, and I'm going to use the next step to go over those as well. So that'll be the 120 grit. All right, now this board is as smooth as it needs to be. I am going to go over the edges by hand a little bit, just because the random orbit sander doesn't leave a perfectly rounded over edge. So I'm just going to touch it up a little bit by hand. Hello, baby girl. Hi. Oh, you sweet thing. Yes. What a good girl you are. Oh, and Roxy and Charlie. Hello, doggies. Hello, doggies. All right. Well, there you have it. Now I've got a nice smooth surface. You know, most of the scratches have gone. Now, cutting boards are typically made out of a hardwood. This is a bamboo, you know, and it's for such a fast growing monocot. You know, it's essentially a grass, a great big grass. Um, it is a very hard and resilient building material, and I think people in Asia have known that for millennia. Anyway, you typical to find cutting boards made out of ash or maple, oak sometimes. Basically, the vertical grains like this are pretty impermeable to moisture. So, you know, I cut my meat on a silicone cutting mat, and I leave my wood for vegetables. You know, it's just a personal preference. If you do use a wooden cutting board for meats, I'd suggest a good scrubbing. You know, with maybe an antibacterial dishwashing soap or something. Maybe spritz it with some vinegar. Uh, Wash it with a mild bleach water solution, say 10 to 1. Anyway, you know, your Dawn dishwashing detergent kind of stuff is going to do a pretty good job if you only cut vegetables and leave the meats for, you know, silicone or a hard plastic product, right? Anyway, so I'm going to refinish this with what I use. Where is it? There it is. I'm going to be refinishing it with the Howards, right? Now, this is a butcher block conditioner. You can find cutting board conditioners. You can use any kind of food grade oils, mineral oils, you know, beeswax, even, walnut oils. There's all kinds, but there's a lot of specialty products just for cutting boards, butcher block tops. And so, you know, that's what I've got. That's what I use. And it's a blend of waxes and oils, and it does a really good job. All right, let's get a finish on this thing. Okay, I'm going to let this sit on here for a little bit, maybe give it 15, 20 minutes dry time, and I'll come back, wipe it off with a clean towel, and we'll be done. All right, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's wipe it off. Very nice. Very, very nice. All right. And that's all there is to it. All right. Well, that's all there is to it. A little refurbishing on uh, a cupboard queen. This thing had been languishing unused for years, and now it's going to go into the camping gear and get used again. Hurrah! All right. Anyway, speaking of camping, Sam and I are going out this weekend, so stay tuned for content on that. We'll be saying goodbye to the Explorer. Sad, but more on that in the next video as well. So if you haven't already, the best way you can support my channel is just by hitting the subscribe button. I appreciate it. I value all of my subscribers. If you like to help support the channel and travels for Summit and myself, more adventures, I do have memberships available that is in the description down below. For $4.99 a month, you can support Grandpa and Summit in the adventures that we get ourselves up to. So until next time, take a hike. Be blessed.